Coming to you from the all-new Live House in Hollywood, California.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Pensado's Place. We're going to dig into international reggae scene with an expert. Michael Goldwasser will join us in just a second. Hope you had a great Halloween. You know what's next is Thanksgiving, except we're going to flip it a little bit. You're going to do the thanking and we're going to do the giving, because you know what's coming up? Next week starts the Pensado's Place Ultimate Vocal Thanksgiving. It's brought to you by AutoTune. The details next week, but you're going to win a powerful vocal tool from AutoTunes, a powerful microphone from AKG. We're going to have multiple winners each week. You want to be there. That's teasing you. Next week it starts. Also, remember, it's November, so that means you have 3 weeks to get your Sweetwater wish list together. Register at sweetwater.com, put in your favorite gear to your wish list, and you can win $5,000 of the gear that you pick out. Deadline is November 22nd. Hit us up on our socials. You see them right here. Like and subscribe if you would. We'd appreciate that, as we always do. And now for our guest, as we said, he does some very interesting things with remixes, his approach to records like The Dub Side of the Moon or Radio Dread. He's done remixes for Kelly Clarkson, Janelle Monáe. He knows his stuff. This talented musician's name is Michael Goldwasser, and enjoy our conversation. Welcome, man.
Thank you, Herb. Thank you, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good to have you. And probably for 2020, I would say you get the award for the best COVID hair.
Well, it's funny because before lockdown started, I was bald. I had no facial hair. And then bam, just,
boom, here it comes. And you know what? I was a white guy from Iowa.
There you go.
And it just changed. Tell us this. It feels to me in knowing about you, learning about you and other stuff, and thanks to my dear friend Serena Boy, reggae for you is a passion thing. It's not just an artifice to make a living. It's something you feel in your bones. Do I have that correct? And where did all that start?
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, anyone who wants to make a living concentrate on reggae is kind of crazy. Anyway, it's not the most stable and it's not the most popular genre. But yes, I really do love reggae. I love all music, as I'm sure you guys do too. I always think about the famous Thelonious Monk quote where a reporter is like, "What kind of music do you like?" And he said, "I like all music." And the reporter said, "Even country?" And he said, "What part of my answer do you not understand?"
Right.
Because if people who love music, you love music. There's good and bad and everything, So, so yes, I really love reggae. It started for me. I was fortunate enough to grow up in New York City, and you're exposed to a lot of different music. I lived in Queens, which is the borough of New York that has the most immigrants from the most number of countries in the entire United States.
Yep.
My parents love all kinds of music, and they exposed me to everything from birth. And then going to school in New York, hearing some of the older kids really loved ska and reggae. They thought it was cool. And I started playing music when I was about 13, and I gravitated towards those vibes. And then on another tip that a lot of people don't think about, I love the lyrical content of a lot of reggae. It speaks to me. There's a lot of reggae about social justice, fighting inequality, fighting for your rights. So, maybe it sounds cliche, but it really is meaningful when you think about what's behind it. Yep. And there's also a lot of reggae that, because I don't want to delve too deeply into Rastafari. I don't know, we have time to go there, but the religion that a lot of reggae is based on a lot of it is influenced by Judaism. I'm Jewish. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the iconography is Jewish iconography. A lot of the references, like when I was 12, 13, 14, listening to Bob Marley or Dennis Brown, other reggae singers, a lot of these songs, the lyrics I was like, wow, that's an English translation of what I know from the synagogue.
Wow.
So it's an instant connection. It's not, to me, it's not strange that a Jewish person would really feel reggae.
I never knew that correlation. That's fascinating. That's going to make me listen to it and think about it differently. Really fascinating.
Okay. Yeah, Rastafarian is is Ethiopian, Haile Selassie, and there was a big Jewish element in Ethiopia. Well, I don't mean to get off topic, but I think one of the 12 tribes ended up in Ethiopia, didn't they?
That is a theory. There's a theory that the tribe of Dan ended up in Ethiopia. There's other theories that there's a story that's from the Jewish Bible that was also carried into Ethiopian scripture about King Solomon of Israel having a relationship with the Queen of Sheba, who went back to Ethiopia and raised Solomon's son there, Menelik, and he's considered the forefather of the Ethiopian imperial regime that went down to Haile Selassie. So
here's something that people don't know. Menelik created the drum machine.
Wow, you're really dropping some science, Herb.
I thought it was Dave Grohl.
No, that's a different tribe completely.
Oh, okay.
So, Mike, part of what's so fascinating is we have interviewed Halsey's producer Lido recently, and part of his craft is reimagining things. He took a Bill Withers song and just completely flipped it. And you take different projects, Pink Floyd and other kinds of things, and then reinterpret them through how you see them and hear them from a reggae standpoint. Is the challenge there being true to the reggae craft form, the other one, both, all of it? How do you think about the process then?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's all of it. It's about balance. It's about the way I envision these albums is, how would it sound if, say, the Beatles recorded Sgt. Pepper's in Jamaica in 1979 or something like that, and so it's like the same root material. The songs are the same. Yes. It has to have the same spirit in a way, but as if it was conceived of as reggae in the first place. So I try to, I usually keep the harmonic structure of the song close to the original, if not exactly the same. For publishing clearance reasons, often the lyrics and melody have to stay the same, although we have worked with some publishers that have allowed us to make slight changes or additions. And then it's all about, putting it through the reggae machine that is my brain. I walk down the street and I hear music coming from somewhere and I reimagine it as reggae because it's just what I do. It's a blessing and a curse, I guess. But yeah, so it's about, look, I don't want these albums to come out sounding like fake reggae. I want it to sound like authentic reggae. I work with all musicians who really have been playing reggae for a long time and really love reggae. I try to record in an authentic way. I use a lot of vintage equipment and try to capture the vibe that I love from that music. And it's not because I'm a purist. I'm not one of those people that I have to only use this console and can only use this spring reverb. I just want it to sound like music that I would enjoy. And that's my main goal, and then hopefully other people will enjoy it too, of course.
Right.
A lot of people don't realize that the Beatles did a song called Obla Di Obla Da in 1968, which could be thought of as a reggae song. For me, it was Johnny Nash. I forget the movie. It was a movie, and that's when reggae kind of really came on my radar. And then growing up in South Florida, which is technically not the same as South Georgia, it's a little different because it's mostly Hispanics. But there's something about Southern funk music in reggae that seemed to be cousins, and so it's kind of easy for me to mix it and to start playing on it. Chris Blackwell, what do you think about him and how much importance he was to reggae with Island Records?
Yeah, he was very important. I mean, he didn't discover reggae, but he promoted the hell out of it at a time when no one else was promoting it internationally, and he had a lot of success with the single My Boy Lollipop by Millie Small, and that became a huge hit, definitely in the UK. I don't remember how it charted in the US. And then his involvement with Bob Marley and the Wailers and really, or taking the Wailers and making it into Bob Marley and the Wailers and making them huge international stars. And he had the vision I believe it was his idea to overdub additional musicians onto their first album to give it a little more of a broad appeal to the rock audience. which worked really well. So of course, there are some people like Peter Tosh used to say a lot of bad stuff about Chris Blackwell.
Yep.
But, I'm sure there was a lot of, personal and sour grapes there, but I think Chris Blackwell did a lot to make reggae into the international force that it is today. So thank you, Chris.
One of the, in my career path, and for our audience who probably doesn't know, Chris Blackwell was the head and founder of Island Records. And there's a history of Island Records in terms of music, not just reggae, but also being avant-garde and incorporating other music. I know it's before most of your time, so we want to keep our references current. But Chris Blackwell, I spent time I had a label. My very first label deal was at Island Records. And so I spent time with him. It was interesting, his perspective, because much like today's world in hip hop, Chris wanted to break rules, but he also wanted to bring everybody together in breaking those rules. So it wasn't about, I'm only going to appeal to over here. I'm going to try to take an idiom and an art form that you might not know about and figure out how to keep it authentic. And to your point, Michael, make it broader, then promote the hell out of it so it can become part of the culture. And it was fascinating to learn that. The other fascinating thing to learn was he never traveled with luggage. So he just bought 2 of everything. And when he got on his private plane, he would just go to the place in LA and all his clothes would be there. When he went back to New York, all his clothes would be there. And for about 10 seconds in one of my up periods, I tried to copy that and do a fake version of that till I ran out of gas and money. But a very cool guy. So Mike, you play bass? Is that the principal instrument? Or you play everything?
I play guitar, I play bass, I play keys.
Everything.
Yeah, I mean, I used to play alto sax, but I gave it up because I knew I'd never be good enough I didn't want to take the time to practice for 4 or 5 hours a day and become Charlie Parker, who was one of my idols. So I gave that up, but it allowed me to then be a horn arranger now, the knowledge that I had from playing that then. So
when you compose, do you start with a certain thing? Do you start with a melody? Do you start on a keyboard? How does your writing process really work?
It's different every time. I mean, sometimes I get an idea for a bass line or a chord progression or a drum part. It comes from all different places. When I'm arranging, say, these reggae reinterpretations, often it's, I listen to the source material a lot, and then often the first thing I'll come up with will be a reggae bass line that will make sense for the source material. So, bass is the most important instrument in reggae.
Yeah.
So that's the foundation of writing a reggae arrangement for me, is generally the bass.
Describe the essence of reggae. To me, I would say it's the bass, it's the organ, and definitely the guitar. I play an eighth notes. But it's more than that. It's the combination of those things gives a certain loping feel, kind of a little bit like dubstep. Gives that, and I love the and beat, 1 and 2. And I love that beat. So from your perspective, as a pro in that world, what to you is the essence of reggae? What makes reggae for you?
Wow, that's a great question, Dave, because even though I've been doing this for a long time and I've been interviewed a bunch of times, I've never really been asked, like, what's the essence of reggae, and that's tough. Because to me, it's all about the feel. It's hard for me to say exactly what aspect of the feel it is, but I know it when I hear it. And I know, I've heard a lot of reggae played not well to my ears. I have mad respect for anyone playing any kind of music. That's great, but I don't love it when I hear a band playing reggae and it just sounds so far from Jamaican reggae that I love, it's really, I guess it's about how you approach each instrument and having the right feel and laying into the pocket in the right way. And I guess a lot of musicians just can't do it. I just learned it from listening and doing it and working with great Jamaican musicians and artists, and that helped me learn it. I guess if I had to sum it up, the essence of reggae is the heartbeat. you don't hear the heartbeat rhythm in most reggae songs, but it's always kind of there. It's the foundation. It goes all the way back to Africa. It's just, I mean, just like I hope that Mike picked it up. That's, a heart, and that is kind of, to me, that's the foundation of Nyabingi music, which is Rasta music. And that is kind of, in a way, the essence of reggae. And there is no reggae without Africa. And I think some American reggae bands or artists, they don't necessarily make that connection. They've heard Bob Marley. They like rock music. They put it together and they're playing music and they love it and their fans love it. And that's cool. But sometimes they're missing Africa and Jamaica. And that makes the big difference to me.
Do you have to be African to be able to hear African and play it?
I don't think so. I mean, I've, played with many African and Jamaican musicians before who didn't kick me off the stage or out of the studio. But I think you have to, like with any music, you have to have an open heart and an open mind, but especially with reggae, it's a spiritual music, and you don't have to be a spiritual person to play it. But I think you have to appreciate that reggae was not created. I mean, it's certainly, there's a lot of fun in reggae and people should listen to it at a party and have a good time dancing and doing whatever they want to do. But to me, you can't divorce reggae from, not only divorcing it, you can't divorce it from Africa, you can't divorce it from Jamaica, you can't divorce it from the fight for equal rights and justice. You can't really divorce it from the spirituality that comes from Rastafari.
In some ways, Mike, as a guy who was raised in church, some of the rules around gospel music, some of the kind of bumpers and barriers and so on and so forth, not barriers, but bumper guards that you need to respect and pay attention to are not dissimilar. I mean, gospel you can praise and sing and play, but it's coming from a place of struggle and a place of crying out for the right thing, and oftentimes a place where people can communicate. It has a purpose to it, even though it can be interpreted in other ways. And it's a great way to think about it. And actually, I wanted to, in the time that we're in such a cancel culture, have you ever run up against people who feel like it's cultural appropriation, what you're doing, and so on and so forth? And how have you had to address it, and how did you address it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Very, very relevant. And I haven't dealt with it too much because most of the people I came up making reggae mostly with Jamaican people or people who were part of the New York reggae scene. And there was a lot of respect there. I never felt that I was not welcome. I might be the only non-Jamaican person in a club of 500 people and all the musicians on the stage, but I didn't really think twice about it, That said, I think that it's a real issue. And the reason I feel that what I'm doing is not cultural appropriation in any kind of negative way, and I welcome feedback from your viewers who might disagree with me, is one that I definitely have respect for the origins, which I just was talking about the last few minutes. Also, my goal is not to capitalize on reggae as much as to spread authentic reggae vibes. Nothing would make me happier if Jamaican reggae became a dominant musical force in the world, even though I'm not in Jamaica or not from Jamaica. That's what's important to me. And then also getting back to the very beginning of the interview, there is a strong Jewish component to reggae. That is, reggae would not be what it is without the Jewish scriptures and 2,000 years of that flowing into Christianity and then into Rastafari. So I see it as everyone in the world is sharing cultures, I don't think of it as appropriation. I think of it, and certainly don't think of it as exploitation. I think of it as joyful recognition of beautiful things and beautiful music.
And I must say, to your approach, when you have worked with Steel Pulse and Sprague Benz and some of the folks that you have worked with, it is clear in talking to you that this is not an angle. This is a belief. There's real connective tissue. There's, as I said to you in the beginning, the passion play is really perfect. And I call folks who export culture concierge to goodness. And it's important. Like I would never, as long as I've been around, and I like our references to be current, never had the connection between the Jewish faith and reggae, and it's fascinating. And that kind of information needs to come out more, and it's great that it comes out here. Tell us how the Jason Moriah stuff came around.
Oh, sure. Well, so it's funny because like 10 years ago, I had a meeting at Atlantic Records, that was Jason's label at the time, talking about me doing some remixes for Jason. And I have a pretty good memory in general. I cannot remember why nothing ever happened. It might have been that I was traveling a lot, or maybe they lost interest. I don't remember. But then 2 years ago, someone else from Atlantic Records, not someone I'd been dealing with before, reached out saying, hey, do you want to do a remix for Jason Mraz's new single, which is called Have It All? So I don't know whether I was in some database at Atlantic Records that some new person on the A&R team looked like, oh, we need a remix. Oh, who's that guy? Or if it was an independent idea. But anyway, I did a nice reggae remix of Have It All, very much capturing, I think, trying to capture the essence of Jason's song and his vibe, and keeping it sounding analog and like musicians playing music, which is what I specialize in anyway. I put horns on it, made it really joyful, and Jason loved it. But the people at Atlantic, for whatever reason, didn't really want to put me in touch with Jason, even though they would forward me emails saying, from Jason saying, like, I love the remix. Tell Michael it's the greatest remix I've heard. But they take out his email address, so I couldn't write back to him. Finally, I didn't give up. I kept asking nicely, can you please connect me with Jason Mraz? And finally, I guess maybe they were annoyed with me, and they hooked me up with someone on Jason's team, who then connected me to Jason. So we emailed. He was very, very nice. And I said, hey, next time you're going to be in New York, he lives in California. I said, next time you're in New York, let me know and let's hang out. So a couple months later, he emailed me saying, I'm going to be in New York next week. I said, okay, let's have dinner. I took him to my favorite Ethiopian restaurant.
There you go.
There's a connection. It's up in Harlem. It's called Sion Cafe. It's actually co-owned by an Ethiopian Israeli. So there's another connection. She's Jewish and Ethiopian. Wow. Took Jason there. We talked and ate for about 3.5 hours. We totally hit it off. And by the end of that dinner, we basically agreed to do a whole album together. And the lesson is to everyone out there who's watching this is just ask for what you want. Be true to yourself. Be who you are.
Yes.
But put it out there, because if I had not said to Jason Mraz, or if I hadn't pursued getting connection to him and then said to him, hey, let's do an album together, and presented a plausible program for doing that album, then it wouldn't have happened, Yeah. So I'm really, really grateful that it did, because now we made some great music and we have a great relationship. So it's all good.
I know you probably wouldn't say this, but Look for the Good, the new record, Jason has decided to give all the proceeds to Black Lives Matter movement. And he started out with a $250,000 donation. And he actually gave his advance up. He gave the future royalties up. And you worked on that record. So that's a really, really, really good indication of how good people you are,
Well, thank you. I mean, Jason he's a really, really special person because, people can talk about wanting social justice and helping people, but he literally puts his money where his mouth is. I don't think he really thought twice about donating all of his proceeds to social justice initiatives. It's not just to Black Lives Matter. He's also donating to 5 other very worthwhile organizations. But yeah, he's an amazing, amazing guy. And I actually I was talking to him earlier today, and I said, "Yo, I'm going to be taping Pensado's place." He's like, "Oh, I hadn't heard of that." So now he got on his computer and he's looking. He's like, "Wow, this looks amazing." So now you have a new fan in Jason Mraz.
And tell him we expect him to come on next week.
Oh, next week, I don't know, that might be tight, but
Tell him that I love the way he takes the pre-chorus and either uses a harmonic technique or a rhythmic technique to set up tension that gets released into the chorus. He's the best ever at tension and release going in music. I love the way he handles all of those things. I wish I could remember the songs but anyway.
yeah, he's a really great songwriter and composer. Yeah. Pleasure to work with him in every way, you know.
So reggae kind of is an outgrowth of ska and a couple of other things I can't remember, but sometimes I get confused about the difference between ska and reggae. I remember ska in the '80s from England,
Sure.
But can you give? We hear the term ska, we hear the term rock steady, we hear the term mento or something like that. Describe the difference between ska and reggae.
Sure. Well, so ska generally refers to music made in Jamaica from like around the early 60s up till maybe, I don't know, 1965 or 66. And it was very much based, it started out as a lot of covers of American R&B songs. So it's, like a lot of 1-4-5 kind of stuff, harmonically speaking. And all the original ska musicians were all jazz musicians, and it was very horn heavy, but it emphasized the upbeat that people associate with reggae, but it was at a higher tempo. It can range, but definitely above 100 BPM. One thing about this very different between ska and reggae is that the idea of the reggae bass line, which is so fundamental to reggae now, and having being kind of like the main melodic force in a song besides the melody. In ska, it was much more of a walking, jazz-influenced bass line. So ska music then kind of slowed down to something called rock steady, where horns became much less prominent and vocals were more prominent. And then that was from like maybe 66 to 68. I don't know, some reggae purists out there or aficionados are going to probably kill me for getting the dates wrong. But, and then in the late 60s, it slowed down even more and became more identifiably the reggae that we think of as reggae from the 70s and 80s now.
Okay. And in the event that the music thing goes wrong, goes cattywampus, you should teach this.
Yeah.
Well, I think not beyond the knowledge, the connection is super interesting, and you actually have played with, done with, made the music. So just as a sidebar, not that
thank you.
No. So here's the other part. When you're recording, this is a live idiom, isn't it? Not that you can't do things in the box, but it's about a rhythm section being someplace doing their thing, correct?
Well, look, I think I work differently than a lot of other reggae producers or producers in general, right? Which is that I really do strive to have as many musicians playing together for basic tracking as possible. So I think a lot of people in modern reggae, I don't think that's as common, which is fine. But yes, I definitely think that the vibe that you can capture from people playing together is what makes it work. And, I think about all these recordings that I love from back in the days, and, regardless of genre, it was often you had to play at the same time because it was one microphone, two microphones, So I think that's that captures a spirit that I really love. And I was really fortunate with this Jason Mraz album to be able to do that. And it was myself, I was playing one of the guitars, and then 5 other musicians, all live. Jason was singing scratch vocals live. We even had 4 backing vocalists singing scratch backing vocalists live. So we had this really big sound just there for basic tracking. And I think a lot of the magic came out from that.
Yeah, I'll say this. Reggae needs movement in terms of precision, like precise, perfect beats ain't reggae. You know, like when I think reggae, I think, of course, Sly and Robbie, and they were and are brilliant at. I think one of them might have passed.
Not as of today. Not as of today. I'm pretty sure they're still.
Good. But I met them. I was working with a guy named Wayne Armand from a group called Chalice, which was a big group.
Yeah, I love Chalice.
Yeah, and I was playing. I was recording it and mixing it and playing the guitar parts, and I followed the organ because that was the beat that I felt the most comfortable with. And it turned out good, you know.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of movement in music is better than static. And you say, well, David, we like drums and we like this. But you can still move the drums around, and nobody says they're glued in place. You can shift them easily in a digital world and create a groove. But there's nothing like that groove. It's sexy. It can be ugly. It can be threatening. It can be everything. It's something about that eighth note that just for me, I can't speak with anybody else, but I mean,
So Michael, one of the questions, are there from a producer and composer standpoint, and plus I want to know who mixes your records, if you do or you have other people do it, are there universal reggae rules, certain frequencies, keys, chord structures, other things that make something reggae more than other things, or can you create as you go?
Yeah, I think it's really like any genre. You create as you go. I think there are songs that are considered reggae that when you really think about them, there's not much musically that's really quote unquote reggae.
Uh-huh.
It just is some vibe, or maybe it's just the vocalist happens to be Jamaican. So I don't go in with a lot of rules, and I think most people, like, the rule is make it sound good. I mean, I know that sounds silly, but really, as long as it feels and sounds good, I think that's the best way to approach it. I think when you approach with too many rules, like if you're a purist or it has to be this, it has to be that, then you're kind of starting off the race by having shot yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
Sorry to mix metaphors there, but
No,
I think it's really important to just, and look, maybe, and let me backtrack a little, which is that there probably are rules that I do adhere to, but I don't even think about them because I've internalized.
Because it feels good.
Yeah,
absolutely. Now, what is Goldwasser? You the R&B alter ego, the project. Tell me about that.
Right. That's called Goldwasser.
Oh, I mean Goldwasser. My bad.
That's cool. Look, the whole reason that name came about, I was on a phone call with, I don't know, my bank or something, credit card. I was on hold. And when the woman came back, she said, "Thank you for holding, Mr. Goldwasser." And I thought that's going to be the name of my next project. So I'm so blessed that I've had, all these wonderful opportunities making reggae, but I also really, really love R&B and soul and funk. And that's also informed by growing up in New York City.
Yes.
At a time when a lot of great stuff was happening. And that's like the music that really, moves me. I don't want to say more than reggae, but because I haven't had as many opportunities to pursue it professionally, I really gravitate towards it. So a few years ago, I played R&B growing up. I mean, that was my thing. That's like, if you would ask me, what do you want to be doing? If you asked me when I was like 20 years old, like, what do you want to be doing when you're 40 years old? I'd be like, I want to be a guitarist, the second guitarist in the Isley Brothers, back in the Isley. So anyway, a few years ago, I was like, you know what, this is great. I'm making all this music people really love, but I got to do something for myself. I got to do something that I'm really feeling. And I've been writing all these R&B songs for the last many years. So I finally just, got together as much money as I could, got a bunch of friends, hired great vocalists, and made an album of my own stuff that I called Goldwasser. And one of the greatest things was that I got J.R. Robinson to play drums on a bunch of tracks. Mm-hmm. And Off the Wall is my favorite album of all time. Mm-hmm. And so for those of you viewers who don't know, Off the Wall by Michael Jackson, J.R. Robinson was the drummer on that whole album.
And please tell J.R. I said hello. I worked with him a lot.
Oh, yeah, I will. And he also was the drummer in Rufus, one of my favorite bands of all time. So when I was about to record this album, when I was doing the pre-production, I was like, man, I got to find a drummer who sounds like J.R. Robinson. It didn't occur to me to just try to find him. And I did. I found him I found his website. I wrote to him, and he loved my demos. And boom, I flew out to California. That was a big, big thrill for me to work with someone who's made so much music that I love. So Goldwasser is my R&B soul funk project. I actually never put it out in the U.S. because I couldn't find the right situation to do it right. Like I wanted to have some force behind it to really penetrate what was then called urban AC radio.
Yeah.
But I did have a champion here in New York, well, actually Newark, New Jersey, WBGO, which is a great jazz station. But they also have an R&B program on Saturdays, and the DJ Felix Hernandez. I sent him the CD to the station, and he never responded to me. And then all of a sudden, like one day, someone calls me, "Yo, Michael, your song's on WBGO." So he became a big champion, and then all these DJs from the UK who probably were listening to his show because he's a tastemaker picked up on it, and all of a sudden, this song is called "I Can't Wait," featuring Maya Azucena. It blew up in the UK, and my album wound up. I found a distributor there, and wound up going to #1 on the UK Soul chart for Starpoint Radio. So that was pretty cool. And I also released it in Japan, and I'm hoping to find the right home for it here in the US. And I would love to do a Goldwasser, Volume 2 in the near future.
I may know somebody. So I'll tell you after.
All right.
I have a buddy who has a label through Universal who is absolutely perfect for these.
Wow. Guys. And I know you used to work at Solar Records, right?
Used to work at Solar. I did.
So that's, I definitely, that's some stuff I really, really love, Shalimar and the Whispers, Lakeside, all that stuff. That's a big influence on me.
Well, one of the people on this Zoom right now is the daughter of the lead singer, or the co-lead singer of the Whispers. Tyler Scott is Scotty Scott from the Whispers' daughter.
What?
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. That is so cool. Well, please give your regards to my dad. That's incredible. Actually, I'm such a big fan of all kinds of music. And I also, because no one's going to hand you success. You've got to work for it. You've got to network for it, right? So I'm always trying to reach out to people. I try to knock on every door. And even if 99 times the door doesn't open or gets slammed in my face, that one time might be Jason Mraz saying, "Yes, I'll do an album with you." Yes. So I actually found Leon Silvers III on LinkedIn, wrote to him this heartfelt email. He actually gave me his phone number, and we talked on the phone one time. And I think he was kind of confused to have such a huge fan. I was asking him all these questions, and it was really thrilling for me because I love his productions.
Oh man!
So yeah, I'm a big fan of this music.
We could do stories,
sure.
Musical stories, an amazing social justice set of stories. We had to, part of our assignment as executives was managing Jesse Jackson's presidential campaign, and we had to speak at the UN, and we had to deal with apartheid, and Solar was a lot more than just kind of cool pop R&B records. Sure. That was a big part of it. We all went to school to learn how to do live performances, and so if you couldn't make the grade as a live performer, you just didn't go out. There was a lot of very fascinating things, and for whatever it's worth, and then we'll move on. The Whispers business story, along with the artistic story, for me personally, them and David Geffen were my North Stars in terms of how I wanted to become an executive and move forward. It's completely fascinating. So
to me, it is definitely.
So we'll go offline and have those conversations. Right. DP, now I know you've got this killer batter's box. We've got, the problem that we have today is, and I mean this lovingly, the baseball players we've seen in the batter's box before, some of them, but not every one of them were quite as cerebral as Michael is. So Michael might hit the ball past you and you won't know that it went past you because he's mesmerized your mind with some stuff. So you got to bring it.
That's a lot to live up to her, but I'll do my best.
Well, that's how we try to make people fail.
All right.
So DP, you ready?
Yeah, I'm as ready as Clippers. Here we go. Um,
Oh, God.
Yeah, for an edit.
I'm going to gracefully not say anything.
We can talk basketball later too.
Yeah, we can. We can do that.
Okay, here we go. One word, quick answer. Outboard gear.
The best. Sorry, it's 2 words, but
That's fine.
Guitar pedals.
Funky Chicken, my favorite new one.
Dixie Dregs. They did a song called that. Anyway, Sly and Robbie.
Drum and bass.
Favorite guitar amp.
Fender Hot Rod Deluxe.
Percussion.
Tambourine.
In the box.
Not preferable.
Loops.
Not a fan. I don't know.
Live versus program drums.
Live.
Toots and the Maytals.
Rest in peace.
What was the least expensive piece of gear that you used on a record?
Wow. Probably like an egg shaker. These can't count.
Oh, yeah. Man, that's the best answer that I've ever had for that question.
Wow. And I just happen to have one right there. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I can see defeat, but
you put up a good effort.
I didn't know it was a competition.
Yeah, well, just with us because we're trying to stay stimulated. You were good up until you put grease on the ball. When you wiped your head and then you put grease on the ball. Two technical questions, Mike. One is, are you a big plug-in guy? And if so, what do you like to use? And then do you mix the records, or do you have people, go-to folks for you to mix your records?
I wouldn't say I'm a big plug-in guy because I prefer using outboard gear. I should have come up with a better answer when you threw outboard gear at me. To me, a console is so important to making music and to mixing, especially when I do dub mixing, which is a whole other conversation. But I do all my mixing live on the board. It's like a performance, So and if I do 5 mixes, they're all going to be very different. Well, hypothetically, because I don't remember what I did on the last one. I'm just running around, and sometimes I have someone else there, so I have 4 sets of hands. So yeah, I really prefer outboard gear, but of course I use plugins. I mean, everyone has to. I use a lot of Waves stuff. I'm a Waves guy. I find some of their, their less fancy ones. Like I really, if I can't use an outboard delay, I think their H delay is really great. I love that. If I can't use a real spring reverb, I'll use their Renaissance reverb, their Reverb. They have a spring in there. I understand why people love plugins. It's all good, but to me, I can hear the difference. I can sometimes hear the difference between something done using plugins and sometimes not. In terms of mixing, getting to that part of your question, I always prefer to have someone else mix my stuff because you get a different perspective.
Exactly.
Aside from that, I'm not a trained engineer. I do know how to mix. I've mixed things on my own more times than I'd like to. But I'd rather work with someone who really knows the difference between the 5 compressors that he has lined up in his studio and which one's going to sound better on each instrument, because I don't always have that knowledge. I can, admit that. But I have mixed like all the Easy Star albums, the Easy Star All-Star albums, the tribute ones that we talked about, Dub Side of the Moon, Radio Dread. Those I mixed with someone else as part of the Easy Star conjunto. Like the first Dub Side of the Moon I mixed with Victor Axelrod, very good friend. We mixed that in his basement studio in Brooklyn. And then the next 2, Radio Dread and Easy Star's Lonely Hearts Dub Band, I mixed with Victor Rice, who played bass on those records. One of them, Radio Dread, we mixed in Sao Paulo, Brazil, which was really fun to go down there and mix. So yeah, I think I don't believe that my ideas are always right and that I know everything. I really would rather have someone else there to bounce ideas off of, and really work as a group to come to the best sounding stuff. So I love to either mix with other people or just hire someone else to mix. And the Jason Mraz album was mixed by Scott Jacoby. I don't know if you guys know him, but he's an amazing mix engineer. He won a Grammy for Vampire Weekend. He's mixed for John Legend. A lot of great people. And we've been friends for a while. And I knew he'd be the right person for this record because he knows reggae. He understands reggae. And he also understands pop, so it was perfect to try to capture, make Jason's vocals sound the way a Jason Mraz vocal has to sound, but make the music sound like authentic reggae. And he let me I was in the studio the entire time that he was mixing so that I could participate, so that was a really great situation. And I think Scott would be a great person to have on your show too. He's a really, really brilliant engineer and producer.
We're supposed to have Rostam from Vampire Weekend on with Danielle from Haim and Ariel Reichstad.
Oh, nice. That makes sense.
So, there's a tie in there.
Yeah.
Let me say this before Dave takes us home. Part of the fun of this show is that we get a lot of credit for teaching and, opening up information that people can't get to, and they can meet people like yourself. But one of the great byproducts is that Dave and I learn all the time, almost every week, over and over. And this has been as much a great object lesson for me as one of the co-hosts to learn things and tie things together that I never would have thought of and never searched out. And I have so much respect for not only your craftsmanship with the music, but also your absolute commitment to it and the passion that you have and being a disciple for it. And much props, much respect for that. It's been a pleasure.
Wow. Thank you very much, Herb. I mean, as I said in the very beginning, maybe we weren't even on air yet, but I've been a fan of your show for a long time. I even actually went to a live taping that you guys did at NAMM last year. My boy from Sweetwater got me in ahead of everybody else.
Cool.
I got a really good seat. So yeah, it was an honor to be on the show, and definitely I've learned a lot just from watching your show. And it's not even about the technical stuff. It's more about just philosophies behind producing. Producing is, aside from my family, producing is my life. And there's so much to discuss about it. And your show is kind of the only platform for it. So it's really, really great that you guys do this.
Appreciate that. That's kind of by design, and somehow it all comes together. Please use our platform as you need be. We're going to be connecting some talent to some broader things where people can speak. Let us know if you want to do that. I think people would love to hear from you, and we'd love to have you on some of these panels and some of these visual things we're doing. Cool. Dave, want to take us home?
Okay. I might need your help a minute, Michael. So, guys, I want to share with you some just personal thoughts about today. There's people think of reggae as a monolithic type of music, but there's subdivisions. There's ska. There's rock steady. There's and here's where you can help me. Dance hall, and I think if you want to do what I did, I heard a song called "Many Rivers to Cross" by Jimmy Cliff. And I still you can ask my team. I still cry whenever I hear that song. And then there was a movie that came out called "The Harder They Come, the Harder They Fall." And if you watch that movie and you're not really sold on reggae and the power that it can have on a human being, and it does have power over you. It takes over parts of your body, kind of like chemically too. I don't know what it is, but do a little research, because there's sometimes when the quarantine catches up with me, I go to Early Marley, I go to Jimmy Cliff, I go to Johnny Nash. I can see clearly now, "The Rain Is Gone" is just one of my favorite songs. It's just it's a form of music that should be producing #1 records right now and always. And I say that from my heart. And I don't say it for any other reason than I believe it. When I first heard those records, changed my life. It can change yours. We'll see you soon.